Hey everybody, my name is Manny Espitia. I use the pronouns he, him, his. I am the Northern Regional Director at Run for Something, and I'm really excited to be joining y'all with two young, incredible women who are holding it down in their own states. Both Run for Something endorsed as well. But really excited for all of y'all to be joining the panel of the Art of Defiance, how to be an effective progressive leader. So I'm going to go ahead, introduce myself, Manny Espitia, based out of Nashua, New Hampshire, former state representative in 2018 and 2020. And now I'm currently also the Northern Regional Director at Run for Something. And I'll go ahead and kick it off to Representative Pohutsky.
Thanks, Manny. Laurie Pohutsky, I am serving my third term in the Michigan House. I'm currently serving as the Speaker Pro Tem of the House, which is an exciting turn. First was elected in 2018. My district is currently, we underwent redistricting in the process, so my district is currently House District 17, Northwest Detroit, North Redford Township, and Northeast Livonia. Thank you so much for having me, and I will pass it along to Senator Islam.
Hey everyone, my name is Nabilah Islam. I am the state senator for Georgia State Senate District 7. It was a newly created Senate seat last year. I'm the daughter of Bangladeshi immigrants that came to this country seeking the American dream. I ran for the Senate seat, which is actually one of the most diverse Senate seats in the state, and also in Gwinnett County, which is the fourth most diverse county in America. And so representation definitely matters. And I have a background of working on political campaigns for over a decade, from city council races, gubernatorial, presidential, congressionals, and I've actually run twice for office. And so I'm a freshman senator, and I sit on 4 committees: state institutions and properties, veterans and homeland security. I also sit on government oversight, and last but not least, science and technology.
Awesome. Well, thank y'all for joining us. We were supposed to have Representative Phil Insler from Alabama, but unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, but he is in a special session right now. They're debating congressional maps after the Supreme Court ruled ordering them to redraw their maps. So I think that's, really important stuff. So I'm not, we're going to allow him to do that. He may jump in, he may not, but we're excited nonetheless to have both of y'all with us. So with that, I want to go ahead and start with our first question. So you've all won elections in communities and or states where your progressive values, might not have been popular. What has surprised you the most since taking office?
Senator, if you want to start.
Sure. So I would say I actually think that the progressive platform that I ran on, my progressive values they're actually popular, but they may not get communicated effectively. And so I feel like once I got elected to office and I made sure to communicate my stances, I felt like a lot of people agreed with what I had to say, that progressive, stances are not radical. They're very normal. I ran on a platform of expanding Medicaid, making sure we have, expanded reproductive rights, living wages. And that's something that I would say most of my state Senate district agreed with me on. Also, I will say what surprised me was there is, I'm in the minority, but there is a lack of infrastructure when it comes to communication. And so that's something that I worked really hard on during my campaign, and I made sure to carry over once I became a state senator. But that was something that I learned my first session was communication is key, and sometimes that will have to fall on you as an individual. And then on top of that, it was important that, pay attention to the folks that helped you get elected to office. And I kept those people close to me while I was in session. And so they helped me out big time when I started my first session. So it was from January until the end of March. I think someone in the chat just asked if session already started. So we don't go back in until next January again.
Awesome. Go ahead, Laura.
Yeah. No, you're good. So I think it's sort of building on what the senator said. Frankly, like freedom and permission structure that running on a platform that is true to your progressive values gives you, because, redistricting was very kind to me, but when I was first elected, I was the most marginal member we had in our caucus. I won by less than 250 votes. It was a really tough race. So it was a seat that we, were worried about protecting and keeping. But because I had run a very honest, progressive campaign, there were no surprises for any of the people who had elected me, right? They knew that I was staunchly in support of abortion rights. They knew that I believed in healthcare expansion. They knew where I stood on environmental issues. So that gave me a lot of cover when, some of leadership might have tried to rein me in a little bit, or, keep me from introducing something or even co-sponsoring something. There were no surprises for my district. They already knew where I was on all of this because I had been upfront with them when I was running, which that gave me a lot more latitude to be able to govern the way that I wanted to when I did get here.
And that's always important. You got to be real. You gotta, if you say you're gonna campaign on something, you got to follow up with it. So
I'd also like to add, I think we're seen as assets too, because we're such outspoken leaders in our communities. And so going back to that communication piece, we're able to be a megaphone for our own party. So when I got into the state Senate, and I didn't necessarily feel marginalized, I felt like, my Senate caucus tried to see how they could bring me into the fold and help amplify everything that we had been working on. So I think that's one of our strengths, is being able to effectively communicate about the things that we care about.
Awesome. So second question I have for y'all is, what is the biggest challenge to trying to support or implement the policies and platforms that you ran on?
I think convincing people that they're not as scary as they seem. There is a certain amount of bravery that is required to do some of these things. And, as the senator mentioned, that communication piece is so important to one, just be open and honest with constituents, but also do a bit of education when required, because, opposition to some of these things can be very, very loud, can also be incredibly dishonest and disingenuous. So combating that disinformation is really, really important, but also trying to mitigate the fallout among your own caucus members can be very, very difficult, because not everyone's district looks like mine. Frankly, not everyone's strategy around communicating things, even the very ambitious stuff, looks the same. So trying to talk people down a little bit and make some of it seem less scary can be incredibly challenging.
Go ahead, State Senator.
So I'm a Georgia State Senator. I am in the minority currently. And I will say, though, that what I have learned, and I've always kind of known this because I've been working in politics and campaigns for a while now, but progress can be slow. And so having that patience, but also having a short-term plan and a long-term plan when it comes to a piece of legislation. So what does success look like? And identifying those steps to hopefully, what it looks like to have your bill passed, right? And so, and that takes, relationships within your own caucus, that takes relationships across the aisle. And so that is something that I definitely, have learned as a freshman state senator, is that, make sure you have a timeline for, the bills that you've introduced. And so I will say I actually reintroduced, this has been introduced many times, but to ban the pink tax on menstrual products. I found out that's actually a very a popular bill among a lot of people, especially people, senators that have daughters, apparently. That was what I was told. But finding places where we can agree on, especially when it comes to legislation that can bring relief to people, was something that I try to hone in on when I first started my session earlier this year. And I feel like I've gotten some progress, and hopefully next year I'm hoping to see, the bill got a hearing. It hadn't gotten one in 6 years. And so we'll see where that bill falls next session, but I'm trying to see if we can vote it out of committee.
That's awesome. And yeah, it's really doing that work. And it takes time. I think it's one of the biggest challenges is if it takes time to get a lot of this stuff done. Even the popular stuff, surprisingly. The third question I have for y'all is, what did you learn during your campaign that has helped prepare you for office, for the office you serve?
I will say that, so I had a primary in a general race. And so, like the representative, I had a very tough election as well. I won my primary by 77 votes. I was the closest state Senate race in Georgia last year. I'm yet again the closest state Senate race this year as well. But I think what I learned, campaigning, and I had to campaign against two people, is that I ran against someone that I thought wasn't as progressive as they should be for the district that I now occupy. And so they had a voting record, and I looked at their voting record, and there were certain things that I didn't like about their record, and the district agreed, hence why they voted for me. But I think what that taught me was be intentional about your votes and make sure you read every piece of legislation. Once you're elected to office, so I don't know, it's different in different states, but in Georgia, we're in a part-time state legislature. Like I get paid $21,000 a year. I get $7,000 to hire staff, which is nothing. And so you are limited when it comes to resources, and like there are like bills just flying at you. So making sure that you set up a system early, and being strategic about making sure you understand the legislation that you're voting on is incredibly important, because I have often seen across, within my own party and across the aisle, that sometimes people would just press that green button and not know what they're voting on. And so that can be problematic. And just make sure you do the research is what I've learned. And so I have been doing that.
I learned, and we touched on this a little bit, but how popular some of the things that historically politicians have been afraid to talk about actually are. So a really easy example that might sound a little silly now, given everything that's happened in the last year, but when I first ran, there were people who thought I was insane to talk about abortion rights on the campaign trail. It was just something that was not conventional wisdom, particularly in some of the more difficult seats, which is what I was running in. But I knew, because I had talked to so many constituents in that district, that was something they supported. So I ended up introducing the Reproductive Health Act to repeal the criminal abortion ban that we had on the books here, to expand access. So just kind of internalizing those lessons about, because when you first get elected, you are going to get a lot of pointers from people who, think they know your district better than you, or, think that they just, this is the way it's always been done. And this is, and sometimes it's very, very valuable. Here in Michigan, we have term limits. Institutional knowledge is very limited. It's very important to know what you don't know. But the one thing that nobody is going to know better than you is your district. And that was a really important lesson for me to not just learn, but to remember when it came time to either introduce legislation or to cast votes that, people may have cautioned me against. No one knew it better than me. And that was important for me to remember.
Big facts, honestly. Question number 4 for y'all is, and this is actually something I'm really passionate about, is, caucuses and coalitions are so important, especially in non-progressive districts. So what steps do you take to identify the most impactful and helpful allies?
I mean, figuring out the things that you're passionate about and also what matter most to your district, those are going to be, just really obvious people for you to stay connected with. If there's something that you're not super well versed in, and there's an organization that, that's kind of their area of expertise, making sure that you build up those relationships. But I know the senator also mentioned, remember who helped get you here too. It's important to maintain those relationships, and, respect them, I guess. But, also helping out those those people where you have overlapping interest, or, if you have, if you know that something someone is advocating for might be running into trouble, giving them a heads up and trying to figure out what we can do to best build up support and things like that. It's very much a two-way street. So making sure that you're not just calling to ask people for help, but that you are also offering help is really, really important. And narrowing those groups down by the ones that you are probably going to work most on, both because of your areas of interest and what your district needs, is the best way to focus in on some of them early on.
Can you repeat the question one more time?
No, you're good. So caucuses and coalitions are so important, and especially in non-progressive districts. So what steps do you take to identify, the most impactful and helpful allies?
Well, the representative touched on, finding if there's an issue that you care about, reaching out to that, organization and sitting down with them to learn more about it is like the best way to do it. And it is, one of the more obvious ways to go about doing this. But I would say that I put up a list of all the issues that I cared about and I knew that my district cared about. And I started reaching out to organizations and different leaders and stakeholders within the community to get coffee, to learn their perspectives. I put them on my email list so that they would get updates about, what my campaign was doing to address such issues, where I was going to be at, what rallies I was going to attend. As a state senator, I have joined multiple caucuses, including the first ever AAPI caucus and the largest AAPI caucus in the continental U.S. Hawaii is the largest. We are the second. And then we also formed our first Hispanic caucus, which I also joined. There's a lot of things happening in Georgia right now. I'm super excited about it. Like, we're an emerging state. A lot of people of color are getting elected. Women are getting elected. Where I also joined the Working Families Caucus. We talk about a lot of progressive issues and solutions within that caucus. And so that's an area where I get to meet up with my Democratic colleagues. It's not a partisan caucus, so Republicans are able to join as well. And so sometimes you'll see that, hey, this is a populist issue, and it's not just a Democratic issue. It's a human issue that both parties agree on. And so those are some of the things that I've done as a state senator and as a candidate to make sure that I am inclusive of everyone's voices. And it's helped me be more like wholesome in terms of understanding how each community might think about an issue. And so I try to incorporate those visions and ideas into the solutions that I provide.
Can't forget about the groups who got you into office. I was going to say, and then I always say the most effective people are legislators that I looked up to are the people who were able to organize not just within the state house, but use the outside and help get them to move issues, not just within the state house, but outside of it. So to help move things in the court of public opinion. So my next question for y'all is, when working with your allies, both in your party and outside of your party, how do you weigh the benefits of compromise versus holding firm?
It's a good question. So I will say in the state Senate, I vote my conscience, right? And sometimes, okay, so I will give you some backstory. I'm currently being hit with attack mailers right now, 16 months out from my election, because I'm the closest state Senate race in the state right now. And I knew when I took these votes that I was probably going to get hit on them. But these are votes that I deeply believed that would hurt my community. And I just was not going to just walk away or vote yes on these pieces of legislation, because I just, sometimes it's easier to get along, to go along to get along. That's not the type of legislator that I wanted to be, especially coming into, a state where I don't necessarily have all the power as of yet as a minority in the legislature. But I made sure to definitely vote my conscience and definitely vote my, what my district cares about as well. And so that goes back to communication. And so I am now, in a tough reelect, but I am doing all the things that I need to do in order to raise the resources to effectively communicate to my constituents why I voted the way that I did. And so I think it's very important that we hold firm on the things that we believe in and that we ran on. On top of that, I think it is important to make compromise. And so sometimes, let's say there was a piece of legislation where I wanted more funding for something, but it was cut down significantly. I'm still going to vote for it, right? And I'm not going to there's a saying where don't let perfect be the enemy of the good. And so I've been having to vote on a lot of, I made a lot of votes where I didn't get everything that I wanted, but it got me closer to it. And so that's just kind of the philosophy that I've held on to as a state senator. And again, I keep saying this all the time, but make sure you have the resources to communicate, because your constituents need to hear from you, whether it's town halls, whether it's mailers, whether it's just inviting them for a cup of coffee. I think that's important. Is you need to be out and about and speaking to your community as much as you can.
Absolutely. It's interesting going from being the minority to the majority, because there's been a lot of that, don't let perfect be the enemy of good. It just even so far this term. There's a lot of excitement about being able to get things through that we previously hadn't been able to, but it's also important to remember we have a 1-seat majority in both the House and the Senate. And for better or worse, there are some things that people are not completely comfortable voting on. And again, that kind of goes back to me taking my own advice and trusting them to understand their district better than I do. So, there is legislation where we're trying to get as much good in it as we can, but we also don't want to tip it too far and end up sinking the entire thing by not listening to people who have boundaries around what they're comfortable communicating to their district, just given the tight margins that we have. And that's where, previously in the minority, I know Manny and I were talking about this before we got started. It was a lot easier to just kind of like lob grenades at people and, introduce what I would pass with a magic wand if I was able to. But I don't have a magic wand now. I've got the majority. So, we have to work as a team, which sometimes means making compromises and trusting people to understand what they can communicate to their constituents and where they're not going to be able to get it completely across the finish line with them.
Yeah, I agree with all that. And I think, hold firm where you can, like where, you have values and there are certain things you won't budge on. But I think compromise gets taken as like, oh, it's a dirty word and stuff for some folks. But I think it's, that's how we get things done. It's like, if I have to cut a few things to get it done, take it, because in the long run, getting something is better than getting nothing, honestly. And final question of this moderated panel, and then we'll move on to audience questions, is what's the best advice you would offer newly elected leaders on how to find their partners in progressive power?
Oh man, that's a tough one. This can really be a tough line of work to like find friends and partners. So I would say find people who share your ideals. You kind of can start picking people out based on the campaigns they ran and things like that. And sometimes it's a really good indicator, sometimes a little bit less so, unfortunately. But find people that share your values and share your goals and work on stuff with them. That's a really, really easy way to foster those relationships, is collaborating with people on things that you both care about and you both want to see fully realized.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Like, I think the best way for me was to work on pieces of legislation with other groups. Like, it's not just an isolated unilateral thing. This is going back to coalition building. You need a coalition to help you, pass these bills and communicate these bills to the electorate and to, frankly, all the other senators and representatives in the legislature. I would also say that just to be candid here, I think getting elected as a Democrat in a state Senate that is heavily gerrymandered, and there, a lot of these folks have been in their, seats for a long time on both sides of the aisle. For me, it was kind of a little bit of a struggle to find, the mentors that I needed in order to continue to, grow this progressive agenda that I had championed in my campaign. But I think it's important to just keep reaching out to folks and sitting down with people and understanding what perspectives that they have and seeing where you can meet in the middle, or maybe they're on board completely with the vision that you have. But it's been like an ongoing, a thing that I've had to do. And so and so I've been constantly like building, or like what I tell people is I like to collect people. And so collecting like a kitchen cabinet folks that you can bounce ideas off of is so important, because this work can at times feel lonely, and I'm sure that we've all experienced that, but it's so important to find your people, and those people will be there for you and help you, work on pieces of legislation, help you at, organizing, helping you win your re-elections or your election. And so it's you just got to keep at it and continue to find the best people to surround yourself with.
I agree with all of that. I think also some of the people who I became friends with in the legislature are people that I'm friends with now, who are some of my closest friends in, outside of the legislature, and who are, continuing to do excellent work. But it does get lonely. So it's making sure you find those people and, see how we can collaborate with not just people on your side of the aisle, but with everyone. Because you'd be surprised who you can get along with. And you're like, I may be diametrically opposed to you in every other issue, but on this one issue, which, I sat on the Criminal Justice Committee, and there is a lot of bipartisan work that can be done, can be done there. And so, but, also, like I said, always remember the folks who help put you in, because those folks also give you the energy to keep moving forward, while serving. Now we have some time for questions from the audience. So if folks want to drop a few questions in the chat, we'll have some time to take that. But yeah, let me see. So feel free, drop some questions in the chat, and we'll go ahead and answer them. But I do want to say y'all did an incredible job with the questions we have so far.
Thank you.
And so I guess one question is, let me see.
Well, that's a good one. What advice do you have when it comes to having to work a full-time job while trying to campaign?
Yeah, that's a good question. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's hard. I ran for Congress the first time, and I realized that this is almost impossible to run for office, especially when you're running for a really big seat, working full time and running full time. And so I actually petitioned the FEC to allow folks to use their campaign funds to pay, a wage for folks that are running for office, be able to pay for their healthcare as well, campaign funds. But I would say, as a state legislator, these districts are smaller, so you can do both, but it will be extremely tiring. You just have to remember, this is a labor of love, and making sure that you have your team to carry you when let's say you need days of self-care, making sure that you're still hitting those door numbers, making sure that you're still making those phone calls to raise money is incredibly important. So I think working with your team to develop a plan around your job, because you still need to pay for bills, you still need to pay for your healthcare. You're a human being, but as long as you have like a strategic calendar, you can do it, and make sure you hit those, the metrics that you set for yourself for success.
I always feel a little bad answering this question, because in all honesty, I put myself into the hospital. Like, I ran myself into the ground and just ended up in the hospital for like almost a week. So don't do that.
Don't do that.
As the senator mentioned, like, take some time for yourself, for real. Do that. And also, like, this is very hard for me. I think it's hard for a lot of people, but learn when to ask for help. Mm-hmm. You cannot do everything all at the same time. So if you are going to be working full-time and, let's face it, campaigning full-time, because they're both full-time jobs, your house is going to be messy. You're not going to have clean laundry. So, like, we all have support systems. Get real comfortable just embarrassing yourself and being like, hey, can you just do my laundry? Can you do my dishes? Like, whatever. People want to help you. And I think when you're running for office, so many people look at that as like strictly campaign side work. And that's very, very important. I'm not negating that, but sometimes it's also making sure that you have a place where you can microwave a TV dinner when you're done at the end of the day, because it's not filthy anymore. So being willing and able to ask people for help is really, really important.
I would also say, get to know get to know your support system. Make sure you set expectations with your partner in advance. If you have a partner, as somebody who is now married to my lovely partner, she basically, it was like the first time we had we were barely knew each other, so it was a different conversation. The second time, it was like, all right, so what are you going to make sure you do to take care of yourself this time around? And so things like that, and setting expectations for yourselves is very important. Another good question I see here is, and this is actually a good question in relation to like legislating, is how can we recruit more women to run for office, especially as legislators? Go ahead.
You know, the senator raised an important point about petitioning to use campaign funds for like just a wage, right? So in a similar vein, childcare is a huge burden for a lot of women. So I know that there's been some work to try and get campaign funds at all levels to be able to be used for childcare. I think that's really important. But also, I mean, that was another thing. And I didn't have kids the first time I ran, but I was running with women who did. And offering to help watch their kids while they went and knocked doors or attended an event or something like that is just something that a lot of people don't think to do, but is so valuable. Because sometimes they don't have a partner that can step up and do it. But also, like, and I think we're slowly getting better at this, but it is still a struggle. Making sure that women understand this is a thing they can do and should not feel like there's this, and it's true, I'm not debating it, but there's this phrase that we always hear: it takes a woman 7 times to be asked to run for office before she wants to do it. I feel like there might be something wrong with me because no one asked me to do this. I just got mad and decided I was going to do it. So I feel like I understand making sure that people understand, I understand the point of that little story. But you don't have to be asked to do it either, and there's nothing wrong with you. You're not overly ambitious or any of those negative things that we say about women. If you just see a need and think you would be good at a thing, that's okay too. So I think the more that we normalize that, the more women we will see running for office and just being incredible leaders in the space.
I don't know what else to add to that. So that was a great answer. I mean, in Georgia, I will say that they just passed a law where we can use campaign funds for childcare. And so that's great. And that's going to help open doors for a lot of mothers to run for office. And I know that nationally, that I don't know if they've passed that in Michigan, but they're passing it in a lot of states now. And so that's really helpful. And I would also say, if a woman calls me for support or like a campaign contribution, I give it to them. As long as they match my values, of course. But there's a lot of misogyny when you run for office, especially when it comes to fundraising. And so I think that supporting women, being there for them, funding and contributing to their campaigns, giving them the boost that they need is really important. And so. And then it's as easy as like, I think a lot of people want to help, but they don't know how to do it. So if you're an organizer or an elected official or a community leader, I think it's important for us to reach out to our network of women that would be good leaders and showing them how to run for office, or if this is something that they would like to do. So that's another avenue as well.
Yeah, and I would say just that it's for Latinos, because that's one of my passionate issues, is getting more Latinos to be in office. I think we set the example. We set the role models of, like, people look up to us. They see us and they say, like, if Laurie, if Nabilah can do it, if Manny can do it, then so can I. So like it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy when we elect more people. It becomes easier to recruit more people to do it. Mm-hmm. And also, we become mentors, and I think that's another thing, is for the folks who are in elected office, like, please serve as mentors to these young people or just people who want to run for these offices, because And I'll say that's one of the biggest things I enjoy about Run for Something is that as an organization, it helps young people, young progressives run for office. A lot of our alums serve as advisors to some of these folks, as mentors, because they know what it's like. They've been there. So for us, we can give that advice. We can be there and be supportive of folks. So yeah.
I wanted to give a quick plug for Run for Something because I was like, I managed my primary on my own for the most part. I had a team, but I ran in the most competitive state senate race in Georgia, and so I was like, I'm just gonna manage my race and my general election. It was Run for Something. One of y'all's advisors was like, Nabilah, you need to hire a campaign manager. Like, you cannot do this on your own. And the reason I did that is because I do have a background in managing campaigns, but this organization was really great when it came to giving me realistic advice, and making sure that I didn't burn out.
I guess I don't know if we have time for one more question, but I guess if folks want to have closing thoughts about what it's like to serve, especially when you're progressive and it's tough. Y'all have closing thoughts?
Senator, do you want to start?
So the question was what it's like to repeat it one more time. Sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Just being a progressive in the state legislature, and especially when your values may not align with the entire state. So just some closing thoughts on,
Yeah, I think it's important to speak truth to power. I am my best when I am being real with myself. I think it's so important to be authentic. I was the youngest woman to get elected to the state senate, the first Muslim woman, the first South Asian woman. I'm currently the only Asian woman in the state senate. And so I speak for a lot of communities, and I don't shy away from that because I know that they're counting on me to be a voice that they usually never really had. And so I just, I vote my conscience, I vote my heart, I vote for my community. And, you will take the hits that you do, as I am currently right now, but I'm happy to do so. And that's fine because I'm a fighter. And as progressives, we are fighters, and we speak truth to power about the things that we care about. And sometimes it's not the easiest route, but it's the right one. It's the best route to take because these are the solutions that are going to help our communities. And so you can't just have the courage to speak up. And again, don't go along to get along, and never be complacent. And be on your toes.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's perfect. I mean, the thing is, the way that I always look at it is I have to live with myself for the rest of my life, and I have to be comfortable with all of the decisions that I've made while I'm in office. So I ran on particular values, and it's on me to make sure that I live up to those and that I behave that same way in elected office. So it is an honor to serve, but part of that honor is doing the things you said you would do and being the person that you ran as, even while you're in office.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, all of y'all, for being here. Also want to thank the folks who are putting together Statehouse Futures, and on behalf of Run for Something, an organization that's helping to build that pipeline of young progressives. We're truly honored to have y'all, and I'm hoping that y'all enjoy the rest of the panel. So thank y'all so much, and have a wonderful day.